Rounds and assists for strong punch. He lunges forward. Okay. All right. Good. Good. He's lunging forward. He's doing one of his abilities. And there's energy coming from it. Now, in the future, when I'm doing these critiques, I'm probably not going to be doing like drawovers and stuff. But because it's early on, or if I do a draw over, I'll probably put the number much higher, because it takes a while, and I'm going to try to give you some real comprehensive stuff. All right, so a couple things real quick. We want to focus on, and these things will come, right? Like motion, the line of motion, and also the balance and stuff like that. So let's go for the goods so far, right? What I'm liking about this. I'm liking the intention of like the foreshortening and getting the character's punch like coming toward us. I actually like the hand a bit, right? There's some things where like the fingers are a little evenly spaced apart, and because everything moves and goes in and away in space, there's more overlap. Generally, things that are further away from your eye probably going to be a little bit thinner, have a little bit more overlap, so they won't necessarily be evenly spaced, and your first three fingers feel like they're evenly spaced. But the intention here is good. I really like the expression on the character's face. It's very intense, looking in the right direction, and I like the motion that you're trying to give your character and stuff like that. All really good intent. Adding the line around him adds for a great contrast against the background. What I would implore is, working with the color palette so that it naturally stands up against the background without having to do an outline. But the outline works here, and the color palette works here because it's mostly monochromatic. The browns that you use have some coolness in it, right? And because of that, it works. So that's what's kind of good. Now, a couple things that we all need to work on, but that I see here, which would be a great thing to work on, is instead of drawing symbols, so first and foremost, we all got to work on our mileage. More drawing from life. Some of these problems will go away. Some of the things that you want to work on will 100% go away. I'm sure you know that. You hear me say it all the time, and I'm sure you hear other great artists say it all the time. Another way to rephrase it is we don't want to draw symbols. We don't want to draw the symbols of pants in pants that are ruffling or being folds. We want to draw actual folds that are there. I know that sounds crazy because the folds don't exist, right? But they exist in our lexicon of knowledge of how something drapes and how something is pulled, right? The legs of your character are being pulled apart. So I'm going to do a quick drawing above this from a side view on your intention. Your intention is to have your character like this, throwing the punch, looking forward. I'm going to do a stick figure. His arm is probably down and back like this. This is his hip. This knee is forward here. And he has one arm like this, right? That's most likely the intention of the character. Right now, when you really look at the character based off of like whether you've pushed his body back into space and everything else like that, the character is more like this. His elbow, his fist is right here. He might have a slight bend. Right? And so your character is actually more up like this. And you can almost see that now that you would be comparing them. So what we want to do is, and this is what I will say, right? You guys will see in my sketches where I do my characters, I'll always do like a horizon line. And that's because I'm really trying to push myself to keep considering the horizon line and where the eye is. That way we don't have continuity issues, right? Like you have like a top part of an arm, but then you're seeing the bottom part of something. Technically, if the horizon line is down here, then all you're seeing is bottom. You're not getting a top unless something dips below that line and you can get a top, or unless the person is contorting in such a way that you are seeing a top and a bottom of the two different aspects of it. So that's, you know, that's a separate thing. So how do we get this to get to here? Well, you have to consider that this stuff is moving back into space. It's moving back here. All that stuff is moving back here. Things that are closer to us are bigger. Things that are further away are smaller. We keep that in consideration. When we're drawing with intention, right? Consideration regularly. So, hold on. Let's drop this. These are arrows. So I'm going to keep this arrow. I'm just going to delete this arrow layer here. And just redraw an arrow. So we know we want it to go back into space. The flatter it gets, it's going to go back there. And we know the head's going forward. I'm going to do really rough shapes. And I'm going to overlap. Now there's something to be said too about like how a punch is thrown, you know, and I'll move this over. I really shouldn't be too delicate with this. Technically there's clavicle and stuff like that here. All that stuff is there. I'm really scrunching that, but you know, all that information's there. And now I'm overlapping. You have your deltoid, the top part of your arm, your shoulder, your bicep that's turned, and then this loop here, and technically you can turn it, your oval, a little bit more here. This is like the crest of your forearm, and then your fist, which I might have turned that wrong. Hold on, let me see here. So you have the diagonal here, and then you have your shit here, yeah. So, and that will probably be overlapped. And depending on how we're seeing those fingers, if they're going back into space like this, but keeping that in mind, we're gonna see, I'm gonna rough and then I'm gonna clean. I'm gonna see the inside of this here, and then these are basically gonna get thinner as they get away, and the smaller one's probably gonna be smallest. Thumb here, come out, knuckle, here. And we know from anatomy, and we're gonna wrap going backwards too. So some things are gonna be overlap. They're gonna be pushed back into space, smaller. Can't show everything. Also, this is where my horizon line is, right? So I'm just getting the top part here. Now I've been doing the horizon line shit for a while. That's why I'm not like doing it. Maybe I should do it. I just don't want the critique to go wild long. But you know, like just consider that my horizon line is like roughly right here. So we're seeing a lot of shit underneath here, and it also adds for some dynamic aspect of it. I also like to put my horizon line, you know, right around the thirds or below the thirds. It gives you some good visual interest. And that hand, if we're thinking about anatomy wise, I could be throwing a punch and my hand is probably not going to be behind me just showing my fist here unless I'm really torqued, like past my cam, really torqued past it, and you get that, right? That may intensify it. How I have it now, you're probably going to see some of his arm, some of the fist here upside down. And this leg is going to go back. We're not going to see that fully. And we might even see part of this depending on how hard you want that punch to be. Now I know you have it on a Dutch angle, which basically means you've angled you know, the artwork for it. But can you see the difference in the depth? That adds a certain level of you know, intensity and visual you know, it draws you to the character's eye, right? And that great expression that you have, we want to work with that. So from going to large to here, is providing enough of a flow to your character, right? And you can see now the difference in him being forward like this, then really leaning forward. We're pushing things back into space. If you're having a hard time doing that, just do your C's and get them bigger as they're going closer to you, smaller as they're going further away, and closer to each other, which is indicating the overlap. And let's say I was under this, under a different arm, you would see under the arm, and you would see the under part of the body, and you would see the under part of the leg. So you'd probably see the calf, more crotch, more butt cheek, you know what I'm saying, top thigh being pushed back. See the difference in continuity of under the horizon line, above the horizon line kind of a situation. Now, when it comes to, there's a couple things that you can think about, like flow here and visual shapes. That is like drawing the person into the face. Also considering more butt cheek, by the way. Bam. Also consider this too, like now with all that, we understand movement. Things that are further away from the subject, trying to pose this in a physics way, like a Newtonian physics, right? Things that are further enough away from the object are going to be left behind as the object accelerates or moves in another direction, right? It will have to follow that object. So the hair being up like this, either it's up because of the power up, or it's up because your character is dropping and your hair is then following that way. If your character is moving forward, then the hair is following it from behind. And that's how you can do things like if his hair is longer and you whip his hair like this, it indicates to us as a reader that he actually turned from this way. Same thing with clothing, same thing with abilities and stuff like that. The further away it is from the subject, right? The further it's going to basically follow and be left as a trail, right, if you will. And then yeah, you know, I would say consider that. We're not gonna, I don't want to jump too much into clothing and stuff, but it's more about symbolism. You don't want to draw the symbols of clothes. You really want to draw what would happen. So if you have a ball here and you dropped a cloth on it, the cloth is probably immediately going to drop, and then when it hits the ground, it's probably going to bunch up a little bit. Sorry, my Cintiq is loading. So every drawing should have a horizon line. Yeah, every drawing should have a horizon line. Even mentally, not like actually, you don't have to draw a horizon line for everything, but mentally you should consider your eye line, right? And that's going to change the game for something. And I'll do an example after this. So the drapery hits the ground, it basically folds up because this is where it's stopping, right? We know that's what it does. And maybe depending on the length of it is the messiness it has here at the end, but we know it does that. Now if I take this piece and I pull it over here and it's draping over here, there's some tension there, we're going to have gravity acting forces act on it. It's going to go like this, and then the forces are going to act, but as you see, there's a pulling, right, down. Now think about this with your legs. Depending on how much cloth is in the pants, there's pulling here that's happening from the top of the thigh to the back of the leg. So you're getting some pull there, right? And just, you know, intentionally be like, well, this is what the drop crotch would be, and it's being pulled here, and there's some tension here because there's a knee, so there might be some pulling here because the pants are tucked into the shoes, right? So now you go from that, when you go here, the folds are moved in all over places because you're creating the symbolism of clothes being pulled. But actuality, you know, for artists that have been doing this, you know, like I don't want to say doing it for a long time. It's not that you might have been doing it for a long time, but an artist who has recognized this thing can see automatically, like, and even for people who don't know, it doesn't resonate as much and feel as real because you know, the folds are not operating how we visually as human beings recognize clothing folds. That's why it's so imperative, it's so important to draw from life and develop a visual dictionary of how things operate in the real world, even when you take liberties, because then you can break the rules with intention and still have people follow and understand what you're doing. Does that make sense? And if I'm ever using like words that are too big, be like, my nigga, bring it to a regular place, and I will do that as well. You know, I just yeah, when I was living with the ministers and shit like that, they all, like, both of them I think were lawyers, or they were like really high powered before they quit their jobs, so they always used a very big vocabulary, so I learned a lot of shit from them, and sometimes I was stuck using certain shit. So every drawing should have a horizon line. I definitely got to keep that in mind. Absolutely. So we're talking about the horizon line thing before. I want to show this real quick. And first and foremost, John, thank you so much for doing the Eyes of Darkness. It's not easy watching someone look at your work and tell you things that you can improve or change. Us artists, for the most part, are